Good evening to all. Welcome to today's ESI Facebook live session on technology in type 1 diabetes. I thank Endocrine Society of India for having given the opportunity for me to moderate this session today. I am Dr. Vijay Bhaskar Reddy, endocrinologist based in Pondicherry. So I welcome my co-panelists who are here today. My colleague, Dr. Om Lakani, consultant endocrinologist from Zydus Hospital, Ahmedabad. Mr. Harsh Kohli, co-founder and president, Diabetes in India Youth in Action, DIA, New Delhi. Welcome, sir. I welcome Mr. Sachin Gaur, co-founder and director, Innovatia Curies Foundation of Healthcare and Excellence. He's an expert in artificial intelligence in healthcare technology. Welcome, sir. I welcome Mr. Prashanth Mani, founder and president of Tamil Nadu Type 1 Diabetes Association. Welcome, Prashanth. And I welcome Ms. Cheryl Salis, registered dietitian and certified diabetes educator of Nurture Health Solutions, Mumbai. Welcome. I welcome all the attendees for having joined this session today. And today's topic, all of you will know, is on technology in type 1 diabetes. So I think we have come in a long way with regards to type 1 diabetes, and this year is actually 100 years of insulin discovery. We know that type 1 diabetes is an absolute insulin deficiency state, and patients with type 1 diabetes need insulin for survival. So without insulin, they cannot survive. So this year is a very special year with regard to type 1 diabetes and insulin therapy, because we know that insulin was discovered in 1921 in Canada by Banting and Best, and this year is 100 years of insulin discovery. So we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of insulin discovery. So we have gone through a long way of 100 years, and now we have a lot of innovations, both with regard to insulin therapy and with how we deliver the insulin, and also with regard to glucose monitoring. And today we are in a technology world. We have so many advancements with regards to mobile technology and artificial intelligence, and technology has affected immensely people all over the world, especially in the COVID era, because because the technology has advanced, we are able to carry on with all our meetings and all our activities. And similarly, technology has impacted type 1 diabetes in a big way. And it's very apt that we discuss about technology in type 1 diabetes today. So I would start off with the panel questions, and I request the audience to send your questions on the chat box so that we can take up your questions also. So we know that we have come 100 years of through insulin. We have moved on from animal insulins to human insulins and newer designer analog insulins. Dr. Om Lakani, can you explain to us how the technology has helped in development of various insulin types, especially with regard to the development regarding the technology of genetic engineering and genetic modifications?
Yes, sir. So thank you for the question, sir, and thank you for having me as a part of the panel. So, I think it was 2019, just before the pandemic, I had the privilege of traveling to Denmark. And Denmark, as you know, is the the global headquarters for NovoNordisk, which is one of the largest manufacturers for insulin in the world. And I had the privilege of visiting both their newer insulin production center, as well as the how they used to traditionally make insulin. So we talked about 100 years of insulin, and about just about that time, 100 years back, insulin was actually extracted from animals, right? And initially it was the dog, and then you had the sheep and the cow. So you had the bovine, and then you had the pigs, you had the porcine insulin, which were available many years back, up till very recently. So most of these pharma companies were actually not pharma companies; they were farms, actual farms, right? So you had to you had to raise a pig, or you had to raise a sheep, and then take the pancreas and then extract the insulin. And it was a tedious, long process which extracted very small results over a period of time. So interestingly, gradually they moved, NovoNordisk and most of the companies, they moved to genetic engineering and using recombinant technology for manufacture of insulin. And gone are the days when you require a cow or a pig, a pancreas of those animals to actually extract the insulin. But traditionally, they kept that farm intake, and the farm where they started their whole journey. That farm has now become, they made it like a sort of a museum with a center where where you can have academic discussion or maybe meetings, with a small hostel where you could stay. So they made this into this, and then they moved to the new production facility where they actually manufacture the insulin in the new way. So currently, to just put it simply, recombinant technology is you take a particular gene of interest. So right now, I'm interested in producing the gene, looking at the gene of insulin, which will produce insulin in other people, right? So, you have the insulin gene. So insulin is a protein which is coded by a particular gene. So what they do is they take the gene, the specific gene sequence, and that gene sequence they insert it in some a microbe. Typically they use either E. coli or yeast, and this then produces the machinery of that microbe, then utilizes that to produce newer biomolecules, and in this case it would be insulin. So what you're producing now is basically the same insulin that is produced in the human body. That's the human insulin, and it is produced by the recombinant technology. Now human beings have moved one step further, and we have now gone beyond just producing insulin, which is exactly the same as the human insulin. We have gone on to produce insulin which are better than the human insulin. These are known as insulin analogs. So now you have insulin, they've genetically modified certain sequences of amino acid or added some sequences to produce genetically modified insulin, which has some better properties. For example, you have insulin glargine, which is a long-acting insulin, or insulin degludec, which are long-acting insulin. So they've added particular fat moieties to this insulin chain so that this insulin is released in a much slower way. So the insulin action takes place for a long 24 hours. On the other hand, they've made faster insulin like the Fias, which is the fastest part, where they've made, again, change the genetics in such a way that you can have an insulin which acts instantaneously, which is absorbed instantaneously. So you have different types of insulin which is being produced. So I think, a lot of the time we have a lot of these debates, Harsh knows about these things on social media. What people fail to realize is that modern medicine is a form of technology. Just like you have, your newer iPhones, every year you have some development taking place in the mobile industry. So sometimes you have, this type of camera, and then your newer camera, and then your newer touch devices, and, you have different things which develop. The same way, modern medicine also evolves in the same way. So you have a one particular insulin or one particular medication, and then somebody invents something better, and then that goes into the market and that is used by people. So modern medicine is a form of technology, right? And technology is meant to help people, right? Just like a car is meant to help me going from my home to my hospital in a faster, simpler way. In the same way, modern medicines are meant to help a diseased person or help a person who is suffering from a disease reach a better health in a faster and simpler way. So that's the crux of modern medicine, and that's the crux of how insulin is now being produced in day to day in modern 2021.
Thank you, Dr. Om. I think you highlighted exactly how the insulin is produced currently, and how the insulin is altered so that we can change the duration of action and we can give flexibility to the patient, and that's about innovation. So insulin development technology, I think Om has highlighted correctly. I would request Mr. Harsh Kohli. He has gone through many years of diabetes. I'm sure he would have gone through all the insulins in his life,
Yes.
and I would like to go through your journey through different types of insulin for us.
First of all, a big thanks to the Endocrine Society of India for taking these wonderful initiatives, and all the seminars so far, webinars have been very, very good. And yes, and it's because of technology that we all are sitting over here together, sitting in remote corners. Sachin, as far as Oslo, attending this event and giving his insights into technology. Saying that, I'd like to answer that I was diagnosed in 1992, and straight away I was put on Actrapid, and that was a 40 IU insulin. I remember I had to wait for half an hour after injecting myself before I could take a meal. And I was 11 at that time. So I had to be very, very patient. That no matter what, I have to wait for half an hour. And remember, we couldn't check our sugar levels at that time, blood sugar levels. The only way to monitor our blood sugars were through a urine check. That's it. Then waiting to have your meal. No doubt, it was not an easy task. I was on that. Then eventually I was shifted to a mixed insulin, wherein I used to mix monotards and trapids together. And I remember that I had to even mix 40 IU insulins and 100 IU insulins. I had to do those mental calculations every day. But I got used to it. And it was a part of life for me eventually. Somewhere in 2000, I got hold of a glucometer for the first time. 1999 or 2000, that was when I got my first glucometer. And then I was shifted to pens, insulin pens, and I was on Novomix insulin for quite a long time. But still, the waiting time was again 30 minutes after I had to inject myself. No doubt, life improved with those mix insulins as the injections were less painful being on a pen compared to a syringe, not mixing insulins, all those things. But I was on that same insulin for as long as 14, 15 years, till 2016, till the time my younger son got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. That was when things changed for me, and I decided to learn more about type 1 diabetes. That's how I got in touch with more people of the community, and today I shifted to better insulins. I started learning basal bolus therapy. The first insulin, I shifted to Lantus and Novorapid. I learned carbohydrate counting. With the help of which I was eventually able to reduce my weight from 88 kgs to 68 kgs. Because we all know insulin is an anabolic hormone. It leads to weight gain. Gradually, I learned things. I learned the basics of diabetes management, and technology has been the biggest aid in that. We cannot, without technology, this would not have been possible at all. Today, I'm on an insulin pump. I use my pump anywhere and everywhere I go, along with the continuous glucose monitoring device. So that's how technology has come. I don't need to wait. I'll wait for 15 minutes. Or as Dr. Om mentioned, that if I need to eat earlier, I can even inject Fias with me. As I'm traveling, I carry Fias with me. You don't know that you might need to inject immediately and have a meal. That's how we have traveled. That's how far we have traveled. I mean, I keep it saying very often that from 40 needles to a 4 pen needle, the journey has been nothing short of a miracle. Thank you. I can keep on saying for talking about it as long as, but I know we have time constraints. So thank you, Dr. Reddy, again.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Thank you, Harsh. I think you've gone through your journey well. I think you escaped the animal insulin straight away. You started with the human insulin. So that part, initially there were animal insulins, like Om told, we had bovine insulin and porcine insulins, but we had a lot of immunogenic reactions and antibody formations. And human insulins, the side effects are lesser, with lipohypertrophy and lipodystrophy. And Mr. Harsh, what about the devices you just told about the needles? And how is your journey been through the devices? Because you have long history of diabetes and your next generation is also having type 1. So
Yes.
what about the devices part, the insulin delivery device from the syringes? You used to use glass syringes before, or?
I was on the, I was always on the BD. I was fortunate enough to have the BD syringes with me. I'm sorry, I'm taking the branding, but I was fortunate to have those syringes. Very, very fortunate. But I know people who have used glass syringes, who used to boil the syringes every time. They still send me the photographs. If ever they find an old syringe lying somewhere, they'll just send a photograph and send it across to me. I'd even shared the same a few days back on the group that we all have in common. So I 40 then again immediately I was shifted to a 6 when I was shifted to pens. I used to have 6 needles. Then 4 needles came in, and nothing. It's been a wonderful thing. Initially I got the pump for my son Arush, but because since he was like, we were apprehensive to shift him to a pump, so I decided I'll be on the pump myself. So for the past 2.5 years, I've been using the pump along with the flash glucose monitoring device, which is very common in India. And trust me, the control, everything, they have been very, very good, because with technology, I can see where my sugars are going all the while. I can eventually track, okay, my sugars are going on the higher side. I can increase the temporary basis, or I can take an extra correction dose with the pump, because I don't need to inject myself again and again. And I'd like also make a mention about it that my HbA1c for the past 2 years have been, my friend Prashanth knows it very well. My HbA1c levels for the past 2 years have been ranging between 5.8 to 6.2, because I owe it to technology. Because I can track, as I'm talking to you, I can track my sugars on this device. I can just, what I need to do. Here goes this. Here it is. These are my levels. That's as simple as that. If I'm going low, what I can do? I just need to take a correction, eat something, eat a fast acting carb. If I'm on the higher side, I just need to take a small correction dose. I'm able to spend more time in range, because with time, we have come to the concept of time in range. The more we are time in range, the better outcomes we'll have gradually. The lesser we are at risk of developing long-term complications. Because as I have been taught by Cheryl, that diabetes is a very, very mild disorder, but the complications, they're severe. I remember these words. I keep on telling it to everyone that the complications are severe. Always remember. So I think technology, we all should owe it to technology. But yes, with the technology, we need a big role from our doctors, because when it comes to type 1 diabetes, we need to understand that each one of us is different. Without my endocrinologist input, I should not take any decision, be it shifting any insulin, be it changing from NovoRapid to Fias or any other insulin. Please have a word with your doctor, because your doctor knows your body better than you, because he's a doctor. He spent those 10 years. He's researched well, he's well read, he's well informed. Please understand, don't go by Google Gyan. That's a request. Whatever WhatsApp groups, whatever support groups we have, they're for support purposes. They're not for medications. Don't ask for medical advice in any of your groups you're part of. We all are a part of multiple groups, but we always avoid, we always sort of, I would say, just don't try not to entertain people who ask for medical advice. You just politely tell them, please, your doctor is the right person.
Thank you, Harsh. I think we've gone on from glass syringes to disposable syringes. The needles have become much smaller, making the injections much more comfortable, like Harsh has highlighted us. And now we have moved on to pens, and we also moved on to pumps. And Prashanth, how has been your experience? You had started straight away with pump, or how did you start your journey with insulin and insulin
Okay.
devices?
Hello, doctor. So, I've been loving injections and T1D life a lot, and I personally don't prefer pump because I don't want something attached to my body. So I am like, maybe you can say a partially non-compliant patient of one of those types. But I think, as Harsh told, the technology has helped immensely, because even I was diagnosed in the 90s, same Actrapid and Monotard and the likes. So Harsh said he had to wait for 30 minutes. For me, it was different. I used to wait for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and I'll go off to sleep and then wake up in a hypo, or somebody had to wake me up in a hypo. So that was very difficult. So, which was even life threatening. So it has happened, because I have seen my fellow T1s go into seizures, waiting and not knowing what the level is, because same with glucometer, like maybe in the late 90s, we were told by doctors to use glucometers. We did use it, and it is like taking a photograph. Like you take your measurement, and it says 130. you don't know whether you're going from 200 to 80 or climbing from 80 to 300. You just know it is 130. You think it is all right. But then after CGM, it has been either it is T1 management transforming or maybe life transforming for people like me and Harsh. So it has been really great. And I'm a person, as I said earlier, like non-complaint, like I'm not a very disciplined or committed or stick to timings. I just travel and my meal timings and my lifestyle has been haywire and it's been ups and downs, just like T1. So just like today morning, I've been driving for 9 to 10 hours close, and I've been eating and drinking juice and tea and everything, all that. But still now, I just want to show that what technology can do in spite of this. Like I just have my phone, so yeah. So my levels from in the night, I don't know if it is clear, but it has been almost within 160. I put 160 of all this hectic travel and traveling 3 cities in the morning and just reaching 20 minutes before this meeting. And, and in Kerala, like the COVID cases have been high, like I didn't find any place to drink tea or anything, but then I've been able to manage. And at the same time, like I've gone on extreme level of adventure, like in snow drive and inhabitable areas. So where glucometers don't work. So that is when like I got into CGM because sensor works at extreme temperatures. So I took the reader. So yeah, just like Harsh is holding, I have a reader. So I take because in 2014, when I went for my first adventure trip, like I did suffer a lot in managing my T1, not knowing what my levels were and what I should be doing. But then after 2017 and 2019, I've done even more extreme adventure travel, and it's been a piece of cake, literally. So it's been very helpful for people like me. And like me and Harsh, we are diabetic educators, or like we try to talk to people. But in spite of that, I must say that before this technology, our HbA1c, we wouldn't be able to talk out, or we can't boast about it. So in spite of me being the non-compliant T1, same like Harsh, for the last 1 year or 1.5 years, my HbA1c has been 5.8, 6, and 6.2, the worst. So it's been, and it's very easily manageable. Now, if it was like 4 years or 5 years earlier, if somebody told me like, HbA1c around 6 was possible, I'll say no. No, T1s, yeah, 8, 9 is a kind of okay. But now it is like, in spite of all this flexibility and all, we are able to manage very well. So thanks to technology. And one more thing is like, technology, like you can't be over dependent on technology. The human intervention also need to be there. Like you need to be checking your sugars. Just because you have a pump and sensor doesn't mean that, automatically things go all right. So the human factor is the main guiding factor, where we need to check and then take the correction dose or the carbs for your low sugar and all that. And same with pump, you need to know how to operate and do it properly. So technology plus human intervention makes our lives easier, much easier. And I'm sure like in future, I think with looping and Mayo and everything, like you don't need to even scan. It just gives you alarms and says that wake up, time to take your correction dose even in the night. So technology has been like really helpful for T1s.
Thank you, Prashanth. I think we have gone from syringes to pens to pumps. Although we have technology, Dr. Om is pump. Some people think that just starting on pump, automatically their blood glucose levels will come under control. I think Prashanth also highlighted just technology alone is not enough. We need to do other things also. So do you think insulin pump is appropriate for all type 1 diabetes, or would you choose certain candidates for pump therapy?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think this is where parents of children with type 1 really need to understand. Whenever a parent comes to me saying that, is pump an option? Should we consider that? This is the conversation I tend to have. So what I believe is a patient with type 1 diabetes who is doing very well without the pump right? Generally, right? So he's checking the sugars regularly. He or she is keeping everything under track. Regularly visiting the doctor. Those people tend to do very well on the pump, right? They are the ones whose HbA1cs are close to 7. But some people go on to use a pump thinking that this is the solution to all my problems, right? So, I don't want to check my sugars, pump will do it for me. I don't want to take shots, pump will do it for me. I want my sugar to be pristine, normal, pump will do it for me. That doesn't happen, right? The human intervention is as important for a pump as the technology itself. Maybe perhaps, when you have closed loop devices, perhaps the human intervention will go down, but it's not going to completely go away, right? It's never going to be completely out. So the human intervention part always remains. So for me, a right patient who is a right candidate for a pump would be the person who is demonstrating good abilities, good skills as far as managing the type 1 without the pump. And then their transition to pump is very smooth. Because what happens other way around is that if we have the wrong patient put on pump, it could lead to, we have even seen disastrous consequences. There are a lot of patients you have to stop the pump. You said, no, you are not, you should not be on pump. Let's put you back on basal bolus insulin, multi-dose insulin. We'll track everything. You need to report the sugars to me. We'll do this. And after that, once you demonstrate that ability, we'll go back to your pump. So the human intervention is equally important. And I think, at end of the day, if a patient is doing well, every type 1 patient is a candidate for a pump. But of course, you need to, the basic principles of management do not go away. Pump is not a magic solution. It's not a magic pill. It's not a magic technology. It is just a technology which is just like any other technology. And I think the human intervention is equally important. And, a lot of the times, one of the common problems across the country, you'd also see that you have a lot of endocrinologists, often say that once you put a patient on pump, they often do not show up to the doctors also for years together. That is also common. So we had, I'll tell you one anecdote. This one patient of ours, who went missing, for almost 2 years, after, they were on pump. And after 2 years, we clinically saw this, we thought that this patient is having, hypothyroid. So we did a thyroid function. The patient had overt hypothyroidism. Now, ideally, if the patient would have regularly followed up, we'd have picked those things earlier and probably, started the treatment much earlier. So, type 1 diabetes is not just type 1 diabetes. There could be other associated problems. And at the same time, pump is not a replacement for a doctor. It is not replacement for good practices. It is just a part and parcel. It makes your life easier, but it does not completely eliminate the need for due discretion.
Thank you, Om. Thank you for highlighting that just starting on pump alone is not sufficient. So they need to check their glucometer. They need to get in touch with the doctor and adjust the doses. I think we discussed about looping. I think looping is a system where our glucometer will tell our insulin pump how much insulin doses to give. Mr. Sachin, how far have we progressed with regards to this looping? And can we just allow our glucometers to tell our pumps how much to give? What is the current status, Sachin?
Hi, sir. Thanks for having me. And it's just so inspiring listening to Harsh and Prashanth and others because, it seems like they have almost conquered, and they're on the path to self-actualization. And I think that's the real wonder of technology that I have seen people, getting a lot of anxiety, at least in the initial days. And it's really inspiring to listen to you folks. So I wish I could have been just out of the panel, just listening. And coming to the question, Dr. Reddy, you have asked me, I think this is the day by day technology is getting more accurate. So, kind of managing sugar levels, like really optimizing them and releasing insulin as per the requirement is totally possible. But I'm trained from a cybersecurity background. So I should also make people aware here that when we are using a lot of technology, we should also be careful with the adverse events. I think maybe we may also be careful that if some malfunction happens, there could be some issues with the usage of this automatic technology. So as Dr. Om mentioned that people who are kind of gradually getting there, so I think where Prashanth and Harsh are, they're probably like super users, like they have mastered the trick. So I would say that the technology will allow, Dr. Reddy, but maybe we should take it gradually.
Thank you, Sachin. Just shifting gears, we know that insulin has to be given only as an injection because it's a protein. If taken through the mouth, it gets digested in the stomach through the acid. Dr. Om, do you think we can circumvent the injection route and we can give insulin through any other route without injection, which the patients would love to have? We had inhaled insulin and we had buccal or oral insulin. Doesn't seem to come to the routine use. What is your view on, can we do insulin without injections?
Yeah. So as of 2021, we actually have 3 candidates for oral insulin therapy. One of them is actually an Indian company, which is Biocon, which a lot of people know. Unfortunately, the clinical trials for all the 3 products have not been very encouraging. The oral insulins have been developed to an extent, but they do not demonstrate the glycemic efficacy which is required, the precision that is required for type 1 patients, which you can only get with insulin. Now, what gives me, so this is the bad news, I would say. So you have some development taking place there, but this development has not been good enough. The good news is that, again, the biggest insulin manufacturer now has come with an oral GLP-1 analog, right, which is now in the market, which has already undergone clinical trial. Now, something tells me that the same company is also in line to develop an oral insulin, because now they mastered the art of putting a protein inside a pill, right? Now, if you could put a complex protein inside the pill, perhaps you can put another complex protein, that is insulin, inside the pill. So that possibility does remain. But the problem with inhaled insulin and the, perhaps even the oral insulin would be, like I said, would be precision. Because see, what happens is when you're talking about type 1 diabetes, we are talking about an injectable device where the bioavailability is 100%, so almost 100%. So when I'm injecting an insulin, let's say I'm injecting 10 units, I'm injecting all the 10 units. The problem with any oral substance, as we all know, is that if you're taking a levothyroxine tablet, never is it that a 100% levothyroxine tablet is going to be bioavailable in the body. So there will always be challenges with the oral delivery system. The precision which a lot of us desire may not be there. The same problem actually happened with inhaled insulin. Inhaled insulin came, it created big news. The company which made it, sold it to a big price to another big insulin company, but it fizzed out. It's still around. But the problem is that that delivery system never was able to give the precision which patients with type 1 want. And I think, of all the technologies which is around, I think what gives me the most hope is this closed loop devices. I think that is the one which, if I had to put my money on all the things, what would be the best for a type 1 patient, I would put my resources towards the, a closed loop device, which I think is the one which will give you the deliver the precision and the technology which a type 1 patient needs. So I think that is where I'm really looking at this point of time. And, that is why you had a lot of type 1, patients with type 1 who said that, we are not, waiting anymore. We want to do this. There are a lot of people in technology with type 1 diabetes who are actually taking the matters in their own hand. I think this is the biggest, I think this is something which gives me the most hope, that, they're looking at developing technology themselves. There are a lot of free things. There are a lot of things they already developed, which are open source, which different people, so they're building the blocks, and that eventually you will have a device which is going to be a closed loop device, which is going to be close to as good as a real pancreas. But that's the one where I'm really looking at.
Thank you, Om. I think in summary, we are still looking at giving insulin only through injections, because the other routes like inhaled insulin and oral insulins are not near to success. And as Om told, if you want to give 2 units, ideally you should take around 10 units through inhaled or oral insulins. And the dose, like inhaled insulin was available for a short time from Pfizer, and it got withdrawn from the market. Then shifting gears, I think technology has impacted our nutrition and physical activity. and these two are diet and physical activity are one of the important pillars for type 1 diabetes management. We already had discussions on nutrition and fitness mantras, but I think because it's technology in type 1 diabetes, we thought whoever has not attended those sessions before, just a couple of questions on nutrition and fitness in type 1 diabetes. Ms. Cheryl, how do you look at technology application in nutrition? And would you suggest any online resources and apps to our patients with type 1 diabetes?
Thank you so much, sir, for that question. And it's wonderful being with this very esteemed panel. And all the discussions took me back 21 years because I started my career with NovoNordisk. And that time, porcine and bovine insulins were very much being used. And we had monotard and the same thing. In fact, glucose monitors were so expensive and people had to import them from the US. And it used to cost 7,000 rupees at that time. And it was really, really expensive. And managing patients at that time, and I always say this in most of my seminars, I'm sure Harsh, Prashanth and all have heard me speak about it. You know, people never used to come back to a nutritionist. We were the last people they wanted to see because we were taught a certain thing in college that, okay, anybody with diabetes, type 1, type 2 got the same diet. And, you know, there was a long list of what not to eat and a very small list of foods what they could eat. So obviously people were not happy about it and they never came back. Also, because the patients were on premix insulins, there was no flexibility in terms of the diet. You know, we had to give very fixed meals, and you know, it was very rigid with the amount of carbs that they had to eat at you know, mid meals, because otherwise they would go into hypoglycemia. And we were not really in touch with our patients. You know, if they came to us, great. If they didn't come to us, lost to follow up, and we really didn't get to see. In fact, diabetes, there was no follow up itself. Nobody actually came back to a dietitian for follow-up with diabetes. We really didn't know what was happening. There was no compliance because they were not happy with the plan they got. Imagine a South Indian being told not to eat rice, or somebody from East India told not to eat rice, and you know, they would never follow it. So they all went back very uncontrolled. And I think today, thanks to technology, there's a complete paradigm shift that we're seeing in the way we are managing our patients, because we are real time, you know, in touch with our patients. And, you know, the compliance has really gone up because I think with the newer insulins that have come in, so if they're on basal bolus therapy, which most of our type 1s are on, or with insulin, and like Dr. Om rightly said, you know, I always tell them it's not a magic wand. So don't think that you've been put on the pump today and tomorrow you're going to be in control. You know, you definitely need to work harder. In fact, you need to prick yourselves more. You need to be on a CGM device. You need to count your carbs, and you will get there. Again, carb counting was not something which was followed. In fact, carb counting has come very recently to India. I remember 10 years back when I spoke about carb counting, nobody understood it and nobody wanted to follow it. The doctors also were very skeptical about carb counting, but I thought that there was a huge scope, and I really went deep into this subject. And today we have all our type 1 patients doing carb counting. So again, there is not, you know, it's not necessary to be very, very literate or qualified to be able to do carb counting. We have our very, you know, simple mothers at home who are not educated enough doing carb counting, and they are doing it so beautifully that today they have become mentors to other parents. So technology has really, really, you know, been a huge blessing, I think, to all our patients. But again, using it in the right way. Now, when we're coming to talk about apps, yes, there are a lot of apps which are in the market. However, I always feel, sir, that with Indian food, you still need to standardize things at home, because how you cook food versus how I cook food. For example, a dal. Somebody may make the dal very watery. It may just have 8 to 10 grams of carbs, whereas some people's dal, especially North India, the dal is so thick that you literally have to scoop it through your spoon and eat it. So there the carb count would differ. Similar with the, you know, our portions. If I'm taking a bowl, my bowl size versus a patient's bowl size, they would eat with what? So that's why nowadays you have the standardized bowls. But yes, at least these nutrition apps have helped the person at least understand and gauge, but I always tell them standardize it, because everybody's chapati is also different. You'll agree with me. Even if we take all our chapatis, each one will have different carbs because of the thickness, because of the the diameter, etc. So we tell them to do this, and we tell them, see, it's a one-time exercise that you have to do, and then your chapati size doesn't change, your portions will not change, so you will know exactly, and then we educate them in that way. So I think that is really great. And you have nutrition apps, sir, today, which are there. And in fact, we are developing one with, we've got some 5,000 Indian foods that we've tried to put together. And this is purely for our patients. It's not going to be sold, or it's not, but it's something that I thought was necessary. So we've standardized, and I've written a couple of carb counting books, which again, our patients use. So we've tried to do that, sir.
Thank you. So there are a lot of apps available online. So we need to choose what is applicable to our Indian scenario, as Cheryl told, and we need to follow in consultation with their registered dietitian.
For example, from where I think if you look at Gujarat population, sometimes they put sugar or jaggery to a dal or to a vegetable. There itself, the carb count will change. So, that's why it's important, like everybody is saying, even I totally agree that, a human intervention is still necessary, at least in the beginning, to be able to help them understand. And, once you do that, they're on autopilot. But again, like Dr. Om said, we insist that our patients go back to the doctor. So that is something that we do, because we've seen that once they're on the pump, they think that they've become masters. They don't need to go to the doctor. And we tell them it's not only about sugar numbers, it entails a lot of things, especially with children. So you definitely need to go and see your endocrinologist.
Thank you, Cheryl. Another area where technology has played an important part in type 1 diabetes is with regard to physical activity. I think we are lucky to have Prashanth here, who is a fitness freak. He is not allowed his disease to restrict his physical activity. Prashanth, what is your advice on what do you use for your fitness monitoring and physical activity? Do you think this step counting and pedometers, do they help you with assessing your physical activity levels?
Actually, I'm not a fitness freak. I think T1D has motivated me to be more active. So basically, I'm a lazy person, but because of the condition, I think the motivation to do more and to be physically active. And once you start with that, then you end up doing more, exercise, activity begets activity. So yeah. And earlier, like maybe in the 90s when I started gymming and all that, when you get into a physical activity, in the middle of it, you get into a hypo. It is very difficult not just to continue your exercise, but to even get back home from the gym. It was a big task. So you had to take your friend's help. So now it's like, in a gym, when your sugar is going down or something, your CGM, you keep checking. And I always keep juice with me and just few drinks and then continue with my activity. So that has helped, because doing a physical activity is a big strenuous task mentally too. So once you something like a low sugar or a hypoglycemia stops your activity, then to continue it and then coming back, and it's very difficult. So I think technology has helped. And fitness trackers, yes, I think nowadays everybody, even people who stand up to go take the remote and come back, count their steps. So in a way it is good. So pedometer, you keep kind of count, and then you want to improve it more and more. And right now, I think in this pandemic, everybody wants to know how many steps they did, and the apps, and also different apps where it's like a community. Like tomorrow I do 3 kilometers, Harsh will do 4 kilometers, and then Cheryl will come, okay, let me also join, let me do 5. And it's just like, very nice peer pressure, and it's like a group activity, even if you're on your own. So technology in that way has helped very, gone a great deal in helping us. And one more thing is, I think with type 1, people get confused whether my sugar goes up or comes down and all that. So, it's basically aerobic and anaerobic activity, and it all depends on the intensity. So maybe for a lazy person, even 2 kilometers will be high intensity. And for somebody like, Sridhar or somebody, even if he runs 30 kilometers, it will be like moderate intensity. So then you have these fitness watches and all that, where you can calculate your heart rate, and once you start going above 140, 150, then your sugar will spike. So even with the help of technology, you need to scan. By the time maybe it would have reached higher up or going down, and the time you intervene, it will be slow. It takes time to catch up, to be in range. So with fitness trackers and things like, that if it is high intensity, people even before their activity, they take 2 units of rapid acting and then continue with their activity. Or people, either they have their gel or their juice and then do it. So right now it is much, much easier. And I have known several T1s who stopped activities, stopped their sports, saying that I'm not able to do it. And more importantly, the parents as well as even in school, the teachers say that, this kid, the T1 kid cannot get involved in sports. Don't come to the drill activities, even simple as march pass, saying that no, once he fainted because of low sugar, we are making him sit down. The T1 for them, it's more than not able to do the activity. When you restrict him from doing something, that affects him more. And even the parents, till they grow up. Like, for example, my parent wouldn't even let me go to the next street. Even after I became an adult, say that, no, you have a T1, don't do, this condition, don't go to the next street. So that is when I became a rebel and I went to the most extreme places. So then I had to come back in range, and now I'm trying to be in people where people are there. So, yeah, but coming back to the point is fitness issues or physical activities, everything, technology has gone leaps and bounds. And I must say that this is just the start. I think more and more things are happening. As Dr. Om said, like looping, like, as I said, for me, like, it's my personal mindset that, I'm not on pump yet. I want to use it. I want to try it. But once if something like looping comes large scale, then I'll be one of the first person to go and, put it on myself and try it. So I think somebody has asked about the cost. Sorry, I'm just going to the question somebody asked on Facebook. So they told about the cost and technology. Yes, so many people are finding it difficult to take, even buy insulin. Because once I remember I went to a hospital in Chennai and I was proudly showing my sensor just like I showed now. So there was a parent who saying that, okay, how much does this cost? I said 2,000 rupees. Then she said, no, we don't even change syringe for 5-6 days.
Yes.
Single syringe. Because 8 rupees syringe, this mother is not able to afford, till this child cries in pain, like, no, I can't take any more injections. Only then they change the syringe. So I think as far as cost is there, maybe now the community is there, society, the doctor society, the healthcare system, the government. So I think this is like a momentum which is gathered, so I think we have to work together, and maybe in the near future, like, I think the T1 community is happening so much. I think in the near future, maybe a couple of years down the line, things will happen. And as far as technology is there, I think more people start using the technology, the cost will come down, people will get more access to these technologies. Because if you tell somebody regarding sensor in the first place, they think, no, sensor is very complicated, I'm not doing it. But then once for example, in Tamil Nadu group, I was one of the first, only me and Sridhar were on sensor. Now we have 40 to 50 people using sensors because they see us. Now this 40, 50 will go into 100. So more people will start using sensors. So I think once you start using it, the access and then the whole system, if it works together, then it is going to do great for the community and the technology as well.
Thank you, Prashanth. I think we have covered about technology and insulins and insulin delivery devices. We saw about diet and physical activity. Now moving on to an important area where technology is really advanced is glucose monitoring. I think how we tell about glucose has changed over time. We talked about fasting glucose, then postprandial glucose, then we moved on to HbA1c. Now we talk about time in range. So the glucometrics is been changing a lot. And the way we measure glucose, from urine glucose to blood glucose to continuous glucose monitoring, there have been a lot of advances. Dr. Om, would you just summarize in short about the evolution of glucose monitoring and where we are heading?
Yeah. So, it all started with urine sugar monitoring. So you had those strips and you dip it in the urine, it will change the color, right? And I think, if you were, you've done your chemistry, I think in 11th grade, you're taught about Benedict's solution, those probably the most primary way by which you can check sugars in urine. Those are relatively irrelevant now because, we have, advanced much further than that. Then we moved on to, glucose checking in the blood, which was possible in the labs, right? So you had, we forget that often, so you had the technology there, which of course is still around. and of course with great accuracy, you have those things available. And then you moved on to the glucometers. That's what is known as a point of care device. Now you have, in fact, glucometer led the way for other point of care devices. Now you have devices where you can measure your sodium, the other things also. So the things are developing there. So, you had pioneering work done there using point of care devices. So glucometers went on to there. Then you had what is known as a continuous glucose monitor, CGM, right? Now, CGM is basically, there's sensors which are placed over your body, and it measures the glucose in the interstitial fluid. So there's some fluid between your cells, right? And that is where it measures the sugar. And then there are algorithms there which calculate and calibrate according to your glucose level in your blood, to put it simply, right? So these are continuous glucose monitor. You can, there are many types of CGM. So you have retrospective CGM where you put it, and then you go back to your doctor, and doctor takes the data after a few days, maybe generally 7 days or 15 days, and you take the data, and then he analyzes the data, and then he can give you advice. And then you have real-time CGM, like Harsh showed you, right? So that's at that current moment in time, you can know the actual glucose value. And then there's something in between known as a flash CGM. That is what is again available in India, where you interrogate the device and you get the value. So it will not tell you on its own what the glucose is, but when you ask it, it'll tell you. That's a flash CGM, right? So these are the various devices which are available. Now we have internationally a device known as Eversense, which is a implantable CGM. So you just implant it subcutaneously, and then it stays for 3 months. And then again, you can use technology to get the data from that. So you don't have to keep, changing the CGM every 15 days. You can just implant it and forget about it for the next 3 months. So that's the implantable CGM. A lot of development is taking. What is very interesting is that, as Harsh and Prashanth both talked about their liking for CGM. In fact, a lot of people internationally, if you talk to people in type 1 community, talk to patients, a lot of patients actually love CGM, right? They may not love pumps, but they love CGM, I think. And CGM is something which I think, again, if you're a tech developer, or if you're an investor, this is the space where I'm really looking at, because this is what patients are really finding very useful, especially those who have been very used to, using multi-dose insulin and all that. They just need to know the data, whether it's going up, whether sugar is going down, how they can correct it. Prashanth, discuss a lot about these things, right? So this is something which is vital information. And I think there's a lot of scope for development over there. What I see in future is that, more and more integration of the CGM with the either smart insulin devices or with, pumps and so on. So that is where we're going. But CGM is, I think, a remarkable development. And I think that is where, there's a lot of interest being generated over there.
Thank you, Om. Thank you for highlighting. I think I would request Harsh to share his journey with the glucose monitoring over time.
Yeah. As I said in the starting that I used to check my sugars through urine only. And people who have been diagnosed before I was diagnosed, they tell me that they used to check their sugars through the Benedict's test, wherein they had to use a test tube every time to check their urine sugar levels. Then somewhere in 1999, 2000, I was able to catch hold of a glucometer, which costed a bomb at that time, somewhere around 7,000-8,000 rupees. Again, having a glucometer was not enough. I needed to have test strips. The test strips were expensive, 60 rupees, 70 rupees a strip. That was again a cost. So we used to check only once a week just to see how things are. And coming forward to today, we can, even the cost of test strips has gone down. We have testing strips available for as cheap as 10 rupees a strip. And then anyone who can afford a continuous glucose monitoring, I would, as I just said, that if given a choice between a pump and a CGM, I would anytime choose a continuous glucose monitoring, because that would enable me to take those important decisions to bring my sugars back in range, to keep my sugars in range. So that's the journey in short.
Thank you, Harsh. I think if you can do glucose monitoring without pricking, I think that would most of our patients would love. So then we're talking about non-invasive glucose monitoring. Sachin, do you think the technology is sufficient for us to advance, and without pricking we can see our glucose levels like using an Apple Watch or something?
Yeah, I think we are advancing quite fast in various domains of healthcare, and increasingly we are trying to develop new kind of biomarkers. Now, these biomarkers, for example, initially, let's say they are based on blood analysis, and that's kind of invasive method. But what Dr. Om just mentioned about, using CGM and it still pricks you. I think the newer technology is looking at just as a skin patch and, based on sweat analysis. So IIT Delhi, some guys are working on making it really affordable. And I have seen also in Sweden, an Indian origin girl, she is making some sweat-based tags, and also volatile, compounds that we emit in the breath. They have also turned out to be good biomarkers in many cases. So, for example, Reliance just bought out an Israeli company for COVID detection. So even these VOCs are quite effective in many areas of diagnostics. So I'm quite sure, Dr. Reddy, that with time we will actually make progress in 2-3 dimensions. One is the duration, like what Dr. Om mentioned, like how long is this CGM device valid? So if we want to bring down the cost, and like what Harsh mentioned about his journey of, he was throwing data points on the cost. If we have to make it possible for a normal person to afford it, then like what Prashanth also mentioned, that it has to be adopted by a larger population. Because if we get the manufacturing in India of these things, and instead of importing these, and if we get mass adoption, these will become very, very affordable technologies. And I was just talking to the founder of a company which has raised a substantial amount of money. So I can see that now the new age Indian companies are looking to do things which we were earlier looking, that West will do and will bring, 10 years later. So that's over. So I think in 5 years from now, I would be not surprised that it's not just a type 1 diabetes, but a normal person for a good fitness style, going to Cheryl and, saying, okay, I have my data for last 5 years. By the way, here it is. And this is what I've eaten in the last 5 years. And then she's running some AI and saying, okay, don't eat urad dal, because I have this kind of very revealing kind of discussions, Dr. Reddy, with endocrinologists, and with my own endocrinologist, I got like a very simple advice, which is probably an advice that goes to every diabetic person. But now we are getting into an era of personalization, and doctors can really, take advantage of the technology, and instead of giving like a generic advice to every patient, they can actually absorb a lot of data from their, like personal day-to-day life. And there are, amazing experiments that have been done on gut microbiome. And this is probably a topic which is very less understood, because again, it introduces a third discipline. So we are, if you look at from a person's perspective, like Harsh or Prashanth, they're dealing with an endocrinologist, they're dealing with a nutritionist, and then they have to deal with another third person who's coming from an understanding of microbiology of gut microbiome. And the moment we put these 3-4 disciplines together, it's already too complicated. But if we have the technology which can measure all of that, it kind of brings all of this together. And I am quite confident, Dr. Reddy, sorry for the long answer, but it will not just make us, like what the path Prashanth and Harsh are taking towards self-actualization. I mean, not just conquering the disease, but achieving much more. I think it would be possible for much more number of portion of our population in India or elsewhere. And I think more importantly, life expectancy. I think people who are not able to get right advice, maybe the clinicians will agree with me, their life expectancy is shorter. But how do we increase the life expectancy in general is by living a good life. And I think that's where we need this holistic kind of understanding, and not just like a limited understanding. And that's the role Dr. Reddy technology has to play, to bring everyone together. Thank you.
Thank you, Sachin. I think we're nearing the end of the session. So Another important areas where technology has impacted the type 1 diabetes management is the way the patients consult with their doctors and their nutritionist. Now, most often we have teleconsultation also, which has been approved for the by government of India because of the COVID scenario. So we can do consultation for our patients through WhatsApp, and they can send it to us. We can adjust the insulin doses, and this is one area which has helped us a lot. And now with social media, there is a lot of misinformation is also going around. So false news tends to spread very fast, but true news tends to spread very slowly.
True.
Yes. So I think that is another area where this issue is there. And we didn't discuss about ketones monitoring. So traditionally we do urine ketones monitoring, and now we have blood ketones monitoring also, but that is not used very often. But due to shortage of time, I think we will not discuss this. And as Sachin told, I think there was a question from the audience also regarding technology comes at a cost. So how does technology become affordable to everyone? So technology definitely comes at a cost, but as Sachin told, the more people tend to use, and the more number of devices used, the cost will come down over time. I would request Dr. Om Lakani to summarize this session for us.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay, sir. So I think, let's start with the last part. You talked about cost. And I think Sachin had put some very interesting thoughts. I was reading through that in the chat box as well. What I believe is, and for a long time, I always believed that technology drives down the cost of a lot of things, actually. So you could reach a bigger mass, you could reach a bigger public. Technology overall eventually, especially for a country like India, the more technology we use wisely, the better it is for the mass population, the cheaper things will be. And we have some of the finest brains in the world as far as technology is concerned. I think we need to use it more judiciously. And I think, perhaps this session, maybe to some extent, perhaps stimulates the mind of somebody to use technology in healthcare in a very effective way, as Sachin has already been doing, and a lot of other people have been doing for quite some time. So, on behalf of Endocrine Society of India, I thank you all. Thank the audience first for sparing that time listening to this. Most importantly, I'd like to thank Dr. Vijay sir. Dr. Vijay Bhaskar Reddy sir is like, for me personally, he's like a mentor to me. He often helps me with a lot of issues. He's always been around. Is way senior to me, but is somebody I would always consider as a friend. So I thank him for moderating this session in a beautiful way. I thank Sachin Gaur for being a part of this, sparing his valuable time and giving key insights from a very different lens, from a very different perspective, from a very different frame, which doctors, beyond what doctors are used to. Harsh Kohli has always been a big support for, we have been trying to pass out the message about type 1 in the community, and Harsh has been a pillar of that. So thank you for that. I think his personal journeys were very inspiring. I think, a lot of people will, a lot of younger generation with type 1 may relate to this, and I think they'll learn a lot from this as well. Cheryl, I've known her for a while, and she's very active on social media, and it's always very nice to engage with her. She's extremely proactive, and I think this you can clearly see from what she said here. And I think the nutrition apps they're developing, I think those will be very useful for Indian patients. Prashanth, is my first interaction with him, but thank you so much. I think again your insights were beautiful. I think a lot of things sometimes you have something which stays in your mind. A lot of things which Prashanth said is going to be something which I'm going to remember for a long time. Now, most importantly, Mohan, I think he's hiding somewhere around, but I think he's been traveling for most day. It was very tense. So Dr. Mohan Shenoy is a personal friend of mine, a very close friend of mine. Our career has been kind of going together, and he was very tense about this event because he could not be part of it, because he was traveling for his festival seasons to meet his family, to stay with his family. But I think he has been pillar of this group as well as for this event. And I think, he's been very helpful for making this event, what it is now. And I hope really a lot of people get a lot of, information from this. And Mintu ji, I think Mintu Nath is been the technology guru for us, and I think he and his team have been really supporting this endeavors from Endocrine Society of India. Most importantly, the Endocrine Society of India functionaries, the brains behind it, Dr. Ganpati Bantwal sir, Dr. Sanjay Kalra sir, Dr. Rakesh Sahai, Dr. Hari Kumar sir. You have all these people, who have been kind of, helping us create this platform for, disseminating information about type 1 diabetes. And Dr. Sujoy Ghosh sir is the secretary, and he's been very, very helpful in the entire initiative. So thank you all. And on behalf of Endocrine Society of India, I thank you all again for being a part of this. And, we hope to have more such interactions to really help everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.